considering I do a lot of public speaking, they gave me a dog that's allergic to applause. So I should leave him at home, actually, because people are always coming up to us saying, "You're gorgeous," and they're always talking about the dog. I don't mind. So, I use screen reading software I can't see, so if you could... Goodbye. So if you could put up with this lady speaking at the front, if you don't mind. So I've been asked to talk about the empowering potential of technology and how much good technology is doing in people's lives right across a really broad spectrum of areas, some of which are being celebrated today. I'm going to start off with a brain teaser.
Slide 2. Who done it? Fireman or fireman?
I don't know if you know this, but anyway, so we've got 4 people in a room. We've got a fireman, we've got a banker, a city banker, we've got a truck driver, and we've got a doctor. And the police are looking for a murderer, and they know 2 things about this murderer. They know that he's a man, he's a male, and they know that he's in this room. And these 4 people are playing cards in this room, and the police, they burst into the room. And if you know this already, don't shout out. Give people a second to think about it as well. But they burst into the room, and they instantly know which of these 4 people is the murderer. How? No, he would be the thief. Should I tell you? It is...
Slide 3. The fireman done it.
The fireman done it. Why? Because he's the only man in the room. Okay? The other 3, we've got a city banker, we've got a doctor, and we've got a lorry driver. They're women. Okay? Now, we all make assumptions every day, and sometimes they're conscious, sometimes they're completely unconscious. We just don't know what prejudices we have or what limitations we are assuming that people are working under. And technology, in many instances, can help level the playing field.
Slide 4. 73%.
So I've got a vision impairment. I'm really, really grateful that I have the opportunity to work because, for example, in the UK at the moment, people with a vision impairment, 73% of them are out of work. And that's despite some of the fantastic technologies that we've been hearing about today and in previous years. It's a real shame that when technology is able to help everyone to perform at their best on an equal basis, that we're still in a situation here where the vast majority of people in the UK, in this case with a vision impairment, for example, are out of work. And unfortunately, that applies to other areas as well. So we would ask employers, for example, not to assume that they are limited in what they can do.
Slide 5. Never underestimate power of...
Let's go back to our 4 people.
Here, tap on wrist and email, etc.
If you talk about technology, it's incredibly empowering. So for me, as a blind person, as I was coming in the cab here today, my watch was tapping me on the wrist to tell me when we were approaching a turn, and I could tap the screen to find out what the name of the next street was. Not that I was checking up on the cabbie taking me the right way or anything. It was just that I knew that my ETA and whether I'd get here on time. I could also look at my emails and texts that were coming in, the details of my next calendar appointment. Speaking at Tech4Good Awards, is that what it says? That's what I'm doing. I could tell what the weather is, whether it was going to stay fine for the rest of the day, etc. And all of those just on my watch without even taking my phone out of my pocket. And don't get me started on what I can do if I did take my phone out of my pocket. So technology is incredibly empowering.
Slide 6. Closer look at suspects. Bypass.
But we are still living in an age where people don't necessarily think that technology is going to be able to help people to their fullest extent. So let's take a closer look at these 4 people. So it was the fireman, what done it. Now, he's really good at his job. Let's put to one side that he's a murderer for a moment. So he's really good at his job. And he just happens to have dyslexia as well, which is an invisible condition. You know, you can't tell when somebody's got dyslexia just by looking at them. But the thing about dyslexia is that it's actually really good to have for someone to be able to problem solve, to be a good lateral thinker, to help. You know, so it's a really good person to have in a tight space. And that's because people's brains with dyslexia, the direct contacts, the direct connections between the left and the right halves of the brain aren't there in as many numbers as in other people's brains, but they forge more peripheral links around the edges as they grow up, as their brain forms, trying to get round the issues that they have when trying to read and write, etc. And those peripheral contacts, connections, make them really good lateral thinkers, thinking outside the box. And so for someone who's a fireman, having to work in really tight situations, that's incredibly empowering.
Slide 7. Shuttle launch.
And NASA knew about this, and when those shuttle launches went up, those crew of 7, NASA made sure that in each case, one of the astronauts had dyslexia, and that's purely for that sort of problem-solving capability. So his dyslexia did help him in his work, but it did have a problem when it came to report writing up his reports of jobs that he'd been out on.
Help write reports. Neil Cotterill and team.
So what he uses is something called global autocorrect, and this was a previous year's winner by Lexable. Basically, as he types, it just magically changes words that he misspells into properly spelt words. And he just put in his top couple of 100 most commonly misspelt words. And because it's global, whichever application he's in, Word, email, the internet, it automatically changes it to the correct spellings of words. So his reports actually read really, really well. And here we've got a picture of the Lexable guys,
Neil Cotterill and team.
Neil Cotterill and his team, who were winners in a previous year. So that's what he uses.
Slide 9. Banker has high-functioning autism.
What about the banker? Well, the banker is a lady. And again, just looking at her, there's absolutely nothing that you would know, but she's got high-functioning autism. And that means that, socializing perhaps is a little bit difficult. But what you do find
Slide 10. Period.
is for people with autism, they have a really good ability to be able to spot patterns in market trends, in big data sets. She's really, really good at being able to identify loads of very valuable insights into the data that she deals with every day. And to help her with her social skills, she actually runs a bit of software, which I'll just show you now.
Tech4Good 2000. Task switching. Running. 3 Microsoft Seeing AI. 2 facial expression left. Facial expression.
Does that come up okay? Great. So there's no audio to this. I'll show you a couple of clips later on, and where there's audio, I'll plug in the thing so I don't subject you to my lady unnecessarily. So this is emotion recognition software, and she would use this in something like Google Glass, so that the camera is looking wherever she's looking, and as it detects the emotion, it can tell her in her little heads-up display what the person, emotion is, and that's incredibly valuable information for someone with autism, for example. Apparently, this software is better than us at telling people, well, not better than me, because I haven't a clue what people are looking like. But 86% of the time, it gets it right, even with micro and multiple emotions, compared to 65% of the time for us mere mortals. I'll just close that.
Technology 4 Good Awards. Robin Tech4Good 2006. Slide 10. Slide 10. 10. Slide 11. Runs on glass. Runs scene.
So this is me wearing glass, and this is what she would be wearing as well. Now, you might think, well, what's a blind person going to do with a Google Glass with a little heads-up display? Okay, I can't access the heads-up display, but please don't assume, there is so many choices. That's the beauty of and the power of technology, is that there's so many other choices, multiple ways of accessing information. So I would use the little bone-conducting speaker that sits behind your ear, and I would have that information spoken to me, so that I can tell what people's emotions are like, or if they're falling asleep or something like that. So I'm going to look at another quick video here, because there are other software that can help people, in this case with vision impairment. We heard about Oxsight earlier on, that uses special glasses to enhance what vision people have left.
No selection. To select an object.
Just quickly.
Technology 4. 3 Microsoft Seeing AI.
I'm going to plug in the audio. Yep. Sorry about any crack. So this is an app from Microsoft, and it's running on glasses that have a built-in camera. And let's see how powerful this is.
I joined Microsoft 10 years ago as a software engineer. I love making things which improve people's lives. And one of the things I've always dreamt of since I was at university was this idea of something that could tell you at any moment what's going on around you.
I think it's a man jumping in the air doing a trick on a skateboard.
I teamed up with like-minded engineers to make an app which lets you know who and what is around you. It's based on top of the Microsoft Intelligence APIs, which makes it so much easier to make this kind of thing. The app runs on smartphones, but also on the Pivot Head smart glasses. When you're talking to a bigger group, sometimes you can talk and there's no response and you think, is everyone listening really well?
I get that all the time.
Or are they half asleep? And you never know.
I see two faces, 40-year-old man with a beard looking surprised, 20-year-old woman looking happy.
The app can describe the general age and gender of the people around me and what their emotions are, which is incredible.
Sorry about the edit there. I'm not going to show all of the clips that I show you because of time, but if I were programming that, I'd make sure that it was flattering and it kind of underestimated people's ages so that when...
Tech4Good 2016.
Bear with me.
Slide 11. Slide 12. Doctor still uses DNS. I speak to phone match.
So let's turn to the doctor, the lady doctor. Again, there's no visible impairment that she has, but she actually broke her wrist 6 months ago. And to write all her case notes up, she turned to Dragon Naturally Speaking. And now she was able to dictate at 300 words a minute. She installed the additional medical dictionary so she could say words like fibromyalgia and cardio infarction, and it would recognize them accurately. And she was good to go. Now, when her wrist healed, she carried on using it, because why not? You know, so now she can dictate, she can be much more productive, and she had that insight because of a temporary impairment.
Speak to phone and watch. Use hotkeys on computer.
I speak to my watch. Let me pull that out. Sorry. And I speak to my phone, but on the computer I choose to use hotkeys, for example, because my hands are on the keyboard anyway, so I can do F7 to run the spell checker, Control-Shift-E to turn on track changes, Control-B for bold, that sort of thing. Even before you mouse users, or if you are mouse users, have even sort of half reached for the mouse, let alone grabbed it, moved it, clicked, put your hands back on the keyboard. So in many cases, these adaptations, doing things in a non-standard, non-vanilla way, are actually a more productive, a more efficient way of working. And that's why at AbilityNet, we would recommend that everybody investigates how technology can be adapted to be optimized for themselves.
Slide 13. Truck driver in a wheelchair.
So the truck driver
Truck driver in a
is the only person who's got a visual impairment. So again, don't assume that just because we can't see half of what people are like just by taking a gander at how they appear. And for me, I haven't even got that information anyway. So this person's in a wheelchair.
Slide 14. Adapted truck. Run 3 vids.
So she has an adapted truck. She's got hand controls instead of foot pedals, and that gets around any impairment or any difficulties that she has being in a wheelchair. I'm going to show a few video clips.
No selection. Tech4Good Awards - London July. 4 Berkeley Ionic.
And again, I'll plug this in. Now, being paralyzed should be no barrier to mobility, and let's watch a quick clip of somebody who's using a bionic exoskeleton to be able to get around.
As you can hear, it is not much sound here. And that's what's so important.
So I was in doing a conference presentation last night, and the speaker after me, Chris Moon, chrismoon.com, recommend it, was an amazing guy. He trod on a landmine, he lost an arm and a leg, and he now runs ultramarathons, and he's literally just come back from the Death Valley ultramarathon, 135-mile fun run, he called it. He's got a carbon fiber leg and a prosthetic arm, and he said that actually helps him because he has less weight to carry, and he actually got to the end of this ultramarathon. He ran up a mountain, which was at the end of the finishing line, down again and back. 300 miles he ran, and he's, a double amputee. So very often, these adaptations are more effective. They're more powerful than people that don't necessarily need adaptations or have looked into what would help them. And here's a really good example of that. Here's somebody who's got a robotic arm, so he's an amputee as well, and he's got a special adaptation on it so that he can hold 2 drumsticks, and he can drum at 200 beats a minute, which is way above what any mere mortal with a flesh and blood arm could drum at.
VLC media.
Great. So I just close that.
Technology 4. 6 parallel.
With the technology that we have today, there really is no barriers, or shouldn't be any barriers, unless we impose them ourselves onto what we can do. Here's a quick video clip of somebody who has no movement whatsoever. They haven't got speech to be able to control things. They literally only have their thoughts, and they're able to control a robotic arm.
You're watching the most advanced brain-machine interface in action. Kathy Hutchinson is paralysed and unable to speak, but just by thinking, she's able to control the movements of this robotic arm and drink her morning coffee. She's part of a pioneering study run by researchers at Brown University in the US.
Oh, sorry, I started that again by mistake. I'll just close that.
Technology 4. 7 1 day dot dot dot.
So we've had a little detour into mobility and how people can get around independently or be able to control their environment while we're still thinking about our lady lorry driver. And I just want to finish these video clips by a recent experience I had with autonomous driving. I had my hands on the steering wheel, I had my feet off the pedals, and we all know about how autonomous vehicles are literally just around the corner, excuse the pun. And this is an example of my first experience as a completely blind person in driving autonomously.
VLC media.
What? What? I know it looked like the car, changed colour a tiny bit in the middle there, but we couldn't find a clip of it. I know, I mean, the light, it was all to do with the light. So, but I did, come out of this parking space. That was a Tesla, and they have the ability, it's called a summon feature, and you just press the button on your fob, and wherever you are in the car park, it will, come to you, basically. So that's what it did, and then he pressed the sort of opposite of whatever that one was, and it reparked me again. So, modest, but we will get there, and it will definitely just be a matter of time before I'll be able to do that for real. I'll just go back to
16 presentation of PPTX-PowerPoint. Slide 14. Slide 14. Slide 15. Open Bionics cheaper and more sophisticated
So, nearly done. Open Bionics, for example, are a previous winner in a previous year. And we saw our cyborg drummer with his robotic arm. And prosthetics are more and more cheap these days to produce with 3D printing, as Open Bionics do. And the technology, the mobility that it affords you is increasingly sophisticated every day. So this is the trend that we're seeing across all areas of technology. And of course, we're concentrating here, for my bit, on accessibility and what it's doing to help overcome people's particular special requirements. But in all of these categories, we're seeing innovation at an incredibly fast pace.
Open Bionics cheaper and slide 16. Doesn't care about occupation or discolor.
So just to finish off, technology doesn't care about people's occupations. It doesn't care about the color of their skin. It doesn't care what gender they are, although it probably does know what gender they are, particularly if you've got a beard. So what we're doing here at Tech4Good Awards is celebrating how technology is transforming people's lives. And I've said more than enough. Let's get on and see who the next category winners are and see some more technology and how it's really doing things for good. Thank you.